Hey folks, I'm Peter Lemieux with Rounding Third at BadderSports. I tell baseball stories, and I'm excited about today's story because it is a personal story, something I was involved in. So to set the time machine, because I always go back, right? August 4th, 1979. I was living about 30 miles from Cooperstown, New York. And while I lived there, almost every year in early August, I would go to Cooperstown, sometimes with my sons and different people, to a day before the induction of the Hall of Famers. Because the day before, what we would go is the one big hotel at the time in Cooperstown was the Otesaga Hotel. We would go park the car and walk into the Otesaga Hotel. Guys, this was like going to heaven. Hall of Famers everywhere. If you got autographs, which we did, everybody on the ball was in the Hall of Fame or a current star that was there for personal reasons. Managers, players from the Negro Leagues. I got a ball over here that has the signature of Satchel Paige and Cool Papa Bell. These were great days. On August 4th, 1979, that was important to me because my favorite player growing up was Willie Mays. He was going to be inducted the next day. My best friend, Jack Belinsky, who we go way back, Jack and I, also loved baseball, sports of all kind. He grew up a Dodgers fan. In my family, my father liked the New York Giants, so I was a Giants fan. So he had a natural competition going on there. But he was excited about going to the Willie Mays ceremonies on the day before. So Jack and I went to the Otesaga Hotel and we got a little Giants and by fate, a lot of Dodgers. So we go into the hotel and we wander around just in awe of all the people that are there. And we listened to Willie Mays at a press conference where he answered typical questions and did a good job. But we couldn't really get near Willie because everywhere he went, he was surrounded by all kinds of people, as you might expect. But while wandering around the hotel, we walked by a room and it was weird. It was an empty room, except there were a circle of people, maybe 7 or 8 people in a circle. I said, what is this, a prayer group or something? Well, we curiously went in and we discovered today's story. These people were around a man in a wheelchair. This was Hall of Famer Roy Campanella of the Dodgers. And Roy was telling his story. For those of you who don't know, Roy Campanella played with the Dodgers the year after Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier. So he became on the Dodgers the next guy in that was black. And this was the story that Roy told that affected Jack and me, perhaps for the rest of our lives. I'm going to tell it as I remember hearing it. Roy started off by saying, Jackie and I were on the minor league team in Montreal, minor league team of the Dodgers, and we were playing together. I was the catcher. Jackie played right field for this team. And we were doing pretty good, but, the chances of going to the big leagues, we thought there was a possibility, but no one had ever done it. And they were playing happily in Montreal, and they got a call from Branch Rickey of the Dodgers to meet with him. And this is how it started. Branch Rickey announced to them that they had an away series coming up in Atlanta, Georgia. And Royce explained it this way. You have to understand, Atlanta, Georgia in 1946 was nothing like Atlanta, Georgia today. They were called the Atlanta Crackers. The only people allowed in seats were white people. So the bleachers all around the field were filled with white people. If a black person wanted to go to this game, they got to sit on the grass outside, right beyond the outfield walls. There was a hill, and that's where all the black people sat. Branch Rickey told them, and he has a letter that says if you play in Atlanta, you're going to get killed. Someone is going to shoot you. I have to tell you about this letter. I cannot require you to play there. But I have to tell you this. Someday, someone's going to have to play there if we're going to change this. So Roy Campanella told this story. He said, Jackie and I talked about it, and we decided we're going for it. Jackie said to me, I'm not worried, Roy, because if any trouble starts, I'm in right field. I jump over the wall and I'm with our people. And Roy smiled and said to him, Jackie, if trouble starts, I will beat you to the wall. And it was a hilarious little comment, but it showed his sense of humor. They played. After a while, Jackie got brought up and the world changed. So this is what Roy reminded us of. In 1946, we have a segregated country. We fought World War II with segregated troops. Blacks and whites did not serve together in World War II. Segregated schools, segregated colleges, segregated neighborhoods, and segregated baseball. Blacks and white were clearly defined different, and the blacks were not welcome into the white world. So here's the situation. And Roy said, we started the change, Jackie and me. In 1946, the NBA, small as it was all white. There was a league called the National Football League, which was kind of like a bunch of semi-pro teams. And they actually did have a couple of black players, but they didn't have any, they weren't noticed very much. Baseball was all white. Churches were segregated. Everything was segregated until 1947, when Jackie Robinson took the field for the Brooklyn Dodgers. In 1948, he was joined by Roy Campanella and Don Newcomb and Larry Doby on the Indians, and it was scary. They were mocked and yelled at and threatened everywhere they go. They were not accepted by a lot of their teammates. People called them names every game from the stands and from the opponent's dugouts. It was brutal the way they got treated. Shameful. But Roy Campanella said with pride in his voice, we began the change. People had to accept us when we started to win. It started to play well. We were before civil rights. We were before Martin Luther King. We were before any of that. It was me and Jackie. And in time, it cracked. And the world started to change. I know it's to be true because my youth was spent in the 50s and 60s, and me and my friends' favorite players were all players of color. Hank Aaron, I had a friend who loved the Braves. Hank Aaron had a friend who loved the Pirates, Roberto Clemente. I had Willie Mays. We didn't care what color they were because these guys were dadgum good players, and that's what we admired, okay? So I think part of the reason I didn't grow up as racist as my parents, perhaps, was baseball. So when Roy was telling me we started the change, Jack and I looked at each other and said, this is a true statement. They affected the nation. And it was baseball that led that charge. Baseball guilty for almost 100 years of keeping players out of playing, not by law, but because the owners made an agreement never to hire them. Awful, shameful. Great baseball players who we never heard of because they weren't allowed to play. But it changed. It changed because of bravery and courage. And today I want to single out Jackie Robinson, also Roy Campanella. But over in the American League, Larry Doby. Okay, these guys came in, they were great players, Hall of Famers, and their teams won. And in the end, when a fan goes to the stadium, he wants to see winning. But they changed things. They changed our culture. Roy reminded us, go to Atlanta today. You can't believe that at one time, blacks couldn't go to ball games, couldn't use toilets, couldn't eat in certain restaurants, and could not stay in hotels. You can't believe that when you see the city of Atlanta today. How did it happen? And Roy said this, one word, baseball. Remember Field of Dreams? Baseball. It's always been baseball. That encounter changed Jack Polinsky and me for the rest of our lives. We got to have a great, great admiration for black baseball players, and we understood more compassionately the pain and suffering of those players who never got to play. I call this my day with Roy. Wonderful day, and I'm absolutely pleased to have shared it with you. Folks, like, subscribe, tell me your comments. Get your friends to join our community. We just tell baseball stories, and I'll be looking forward to the next one with you shortly. Peter Lemieux, rounding third. You guys have a great day.